everyone, and hey, Diana,
Right.
the whole crew. So, yeah, we're super excited. This is obviously the first session of Q2. Lyle was able to grace us with an amazing first cohort here from January, February, March, and
Thanks.
so kind of perfect segue as we transition to really everything from product leadership to I'll let kind of Diana, of course, go through her background as we kick it off. But, you know, a lot of the questions and things that we'll go through over the next 3 months doesn't, it doesn't have to be, we've got in the past when we've done this in 2025, a lot of founders that have evolved from, idea stage to multiple features across, millions of revenue. And so Diana has kind of seen it all and knows a lot. So I will let Diana, you kick it off there and we'll kind of jump in.
Sounds perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for all of you joining today. I'm excited to meet all of you. And yeah, as Brian said, I'm Diana Stepner. My background's in product management. I led product teams around the globe for about 20 something years and work at a startup now. I work in an innovation consultancy and build an assessment for them, which is a product that we use to help people understand their innovation mindset. That's a bit about me. I'm in San Francisco and I grew up in Cupertino. So I've been involved in technology, I guess, from birth, something that I'm just familiar with. But always, curious to know about you guys. I don't know if you guys have met each other before. So if it's okay with folks, I'd love to, I'll call out names and love to know a sentence or two about each of you, just to know your backgrounds too. Cody, you're the new person beside the Gilder crew. So I'd love to know a bit about you.
Hey, yep. My name is Cody Graham, and sorry, my camera's not working. But I've been in the product space for about 10 years, based out of Chicago right now. In my day job, support an enterprise platform product, and then in my spare time, I doubled up and support a consumer and B2B product startup. Yeah, we're early days, but excited to learn more, and can't wait to hear you know what's in store.
Oh,
And I just
Christoph.
dropped Cody's. If it's all right, otherwise, you're going to share
Oh,
your
great.
companies. I'll probably drop
Oh,
everyone's
of course.
companies and stuff in the chat so we can all get to learn a little bit about that. But awesome.
Awesome. Christoph, over to you.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Christoph. I'm living in Spain. I have 15 years of experience working in technology companies, more but in the process project management and then strategy consulting. And then I quit and started my company, my startup that is an AI code business coach for early stage founders to reach product market fit.
Cool. And I don't know how you guys planned it, but you're all C names, so that is quite impressive. So thank you for that. Very cool. Connor, over to you.
Sorry, I was grabbing everyone's website to take a look. Um, hey, everybody, I'm Connor. I have a technology advisory concierge company. We're more service based, but I figured I'd hop on to take the opportunity to learn. We're out of Boston and we are B2B.
Cool. Chris?
Hi, everybody. My name's Chris. Got my first job working for an escape room when I was 16. And then I moved to Hollywood and worked for a production designer at Warner Brothers for a couple of years. Uh, Learned how to design a set. And so I've been freelance as a designer for about a year now. And I am combining those two things, designing escape rooms.
Awesome. And I think the rest of the folks are from Gilder. I assume everybody knows everybody except for Lyle, who everybody should have gone to the sessions last quarter.
And Lyle, if you want to
Yeah.
just again kind of give a brief reintroduction of yourself too, to those of you that can still engage in that channel and everything.
Meet anybody who I haven't met before. I'm Lyle Wickersham. I run Brand Think, a consultancy here in New York. We are brand and positioning strategists, and we work with founders of startups and early stage businesses to get them investor ready. So everything from developing go-to-market strategies, identifying market sizing, financial modeling, pitch decks, data rooms, everything they need to get investors to open their wallets.
Okay. Very
Mm.
cool. Awesome. All right. I'm going to dive in and share some slides with you. They'll be in the channel as well. And what I'd love is you guys just to ask questions. I may not be able to see you just given, how Meet is structured, but ask questions throughout. That would be great. And just love to hear from all of you. So let me share. Oop.
Perfect. And then as a reminder for everyone too, obviously these sessions are recorded. They will appear in Diana's channel in Circle. And so if there's any fun follow-up questions, things like that, as these sessions build between the second and the third, that will obviously be going to kind of continue with, the conversation on that end. And I'm sure Diana will also kind of share some other things. And I won't call it homework, but different things to kind of think about between the sessions, just as Lyle did for his first ones. So.
Definitely. Thank you. Got a lot to live up to now. All right. So just a bit about me, my background. I have, a business degree, grew up in Silicon Valley, and then I started in product management from the user research perspective. And my dog is Lancaster. I always put a picture of him because sometimes he ends up joining the calls by barking or just doing whatever he does as a furry little hamster. So you may see him in the call. Beside working at a startup, I also got certified as a coach. So a lot of what I focus on, is from the people perspective. I have a newsletter called People First Leadership, and that encapsulates how I approach product as well as just live day to day. So we've talked about ourselves, so I'm going to skip this. But again, I'm from Silicon Valley. The weird thing that people may not know about me, my middle name is R. It actually is the letter R. The joke that my parents gave is you're supposed to name someone after a dead relative. So I'm Diana R. So DR, dead relative. So that is the strange thing about me. And Brian was amazing and shared, everybody's URLs for their companies. If you want to share in your LinkedIn, it's another great way for you guys to all connect too. All right. So what we're going to go through, through the sessions with the product focus is a methodology that's discover, define, develop, and deliver. And I really like this because it's focused on how you do product. It is very concise, confined, and enables you to have a lot of freedom in all the different spaces that you go through. We're doing 3 sessions this time. So I'm going to focus on discover today. We're going to talk about define, and then develop and deliver are going to go hand in hand. One thing I will say throughout, I constantly have references to AI. I'll call things out. AI changes so rapidly. I'm not sure I'll have the latest thing from yesterday, but, please, talk amongst yourselves in the chat or ask questions, place comments, et cetera, around how you're using AI in the discovery process. And you'll notice a little bit of my bias as I go through. Again, background in user experience research. So I do still believe there's value in humans. So from that perspective, we're going to focus on discover today. You'll also hear it talked about as product discovery. You may hear, just being able to understand, you have this amazing opportunity. You want to be able to understand where it might fit in the market. As Lyle said, you want to get to that product market fit. In the very beginning, you don't have product market fit. You need to understand your customers. You need to understand where you think they might be. And oftentimes you pivot. And so that original idea that you had may actually be something that you leave behind as your product and your focus evolve. So just to give some definitions for folks, product discovery for me is the first step in the product development process. I realize, that may sound kind of funky now in the AI world where you can just build something. And that's amazing. But I think as all you guys have highlighted, there are things that you're doing on the side. There's areas that you're exploring. And all of those opportunities came from somewhere. They came from an idea. They came from an observation. And they came from a feeling. They came from an experience. And that's product discovery. You have this notion that there's a better way to do something. There's a different way to do something. And that's part of discovery. So even though you'll see a lot of people just spinning things up really quickly with AI, there's usually a reason why. Yes, they're trying to learn, how to code with Claude Code or Cowork or something like that. But there's an idea that they had, and that idea is the kernel of the product discovery process. When you're working in a team, that product discovery is the language. It puts in place all of those frames of reference, all those terms, all of those elements that allow a team to head in one direction. Without the discovery, you often don't know the why. You may have a thought or a notion, but you don't really have that common frame of reference. And so product discovery enables all the team members to come together and focus on, the same path. And again, that path may ebb and flow and weave and pivot, but they're all in it together because they have that same access to insight in the very beginning, and that carries them through.
And then quick question, Diana, too.
Yeah.
So heard this from. So obviously, when it comes to product, we're thinking of things too. Like sometimes it's physical hardware, sometimes it could be like a SaaS or software. When I talk to a lot of again consultants, coaches, others that are building their service offering or what that end value is product discovery also applicable right to those kind of on the service side, or is it really more for like again those kind of more physical products, subscription based things like that?
I think it's applicable to anything that is defined as a product. And as you're saying, a product could be a service, it could be, an offering, it could be hardware, it could be software. But unless you have some understanding about the market, unless you have some understanding of what opportunities may be, you're basically stumbling around in the dark. And so I believe that product discovery is really important, regardless of the thing that you're offering, selling, creating, because that gives you some level of knowledge to be able to explore more deeply and refine what your original hypothesis may be.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, but you guys keep asking all those questions. And I love, the Wayne Gretzky quotes. This is one of my favorite because sometimes, again, people think product discovery means I've got to stay with what I thought originally. And this quote is perfect. It's going to change as you learn. You're always going to be aiming for the future. And that's key because it does take a bit to build something. It takes a while to get that customer understanding. It takes a while to be able to put something in the market and test it. Yes, it's a lot faster, but it still means that you need to think about where your product, your offering, your service is going to be applicable, not just now, but in the future. And that product discovery allows you to get a sense of where the market is going so that your offering is applicable, not just today, but again, in the future too. And so this quote you'll see it probably in a lot of product sessions because that's what you're thinking about. Where are these people? Where is my offering? Where is my service going to be relevant, not just today, but in the future? And that's what you want to start aiming towards. Again, the common thing that people reference was Steve Jobs, saying, well, people didn't know that they, needed an iPod or an iPhone, those types of things. But if you asked all the characteristics that people were seeking and bring them together, it gives you an idea of what they want for the future. Not exactly what they said, but it tells you those characteristics that they're going to value. And that's what you're looking for, that sense of what people are going to value, not just today, but in the future as well. So I have this statement, and that's why I wanted to introduce myself and my user research background in the beginning. I still feel, and I still, have a lot of faith in humans. And I believe we still need to speak to humans and get an understanding. The reason that I feel that is because we're kind of random. We say one thing, we do another, we pretend we're happy when inside we may be just screaming. There's so many different facets to humans that are not captured in what the AI can sense. The other piece is, the AI has history, but it doesn't know the sense of the future. And people have an understanding of what they want to value, of where they want to be. And you get that by speaking to humans. Again, we don't wear a t shirt that says that exactly. You need to be able to suss out those elements from speaking to people. So I still feel that you need to do discovery. You still need to talk to humans. There's a lot of opportunity to use synthetic users, which are, I would say bots. They represent the persona of a user. That's really valuable to be able to help refine, but you're selling to actual humans. And they have a lot of nuances that the AI does not have. And so I feel that you still need to speak to humans. So on that note, we're going to start with humans first. And why do product discovery? I gave you some, tidbits before, and it's because discovery development isn't a straight line. There's a lot of twists, there's a lot of turns, and you've got to be able to suss all that out, be able to navigate through all the noise to be able to identify that through line. And that through line is an idea That idea may morph, that idea may change, but that is going to be the lighthouse that guides you forward. And so you want to be able to test that idea. You want to make refinements of it. And that is what you do during product discovery. You do a lot of searching in regards to, areas to consider, to include. You do a lot of testing with both people and with the synthetic users. But all that allows you to see where you want to get to. And without going through that searching, that testing, that clarification, you're going to be building the wrong thing. And I know that sounds quite blunt, but if you don't gather that feedback, you're going with your best guess. And all of us are unique. And just because we feel something is extremely important doesn't mean our target audience also feels that way. And so you need to ensure that you're validating, refining what you're offering, and going beyond just what your initial gut instinct said. So from there, in discovery, just reinforcing what it is, the general direction that you have is likely going to be right, but how you get there, what it actually looks like is going to change. And that's what you're doing during discovery. You're getting those insights to be able to identify the direction you want to take and to make refinements. Those refinements decrease the uncertainty and the risk. And it's much cheaper to make those refinements before you started to build something. And I understand, again, with AI, it's easier, it's cheaper, it's faster to be able to build things earlier. But still, you can save yourself time, a lot of token costs if you do some refinement earlier in the process than just going and building. And so I realize that that may be something that is changing in the world around us, but I still think testing with a prototype through vibe coding, for example, can get you to be able to take out some things, to add in some things at a time where it's a lot less of a lift than having to do so when you actually have started to build out your offering. And again, that's what product discovery allows us to identify. So from there, you start out with product discovery by hypothesis. This is what I think people are going to like. This is the opportunity, the challenge that people are facing. You have that initial theory. You then run experiments to be able to see if that hypothesis holds. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But you run those experiments rapidly to be able to iterate and refine your hypothesis. All of the experiments that you run give you insights. Those insights enable you to have more knowledge about your audience, more knowledge about what they're seeking or what they would appreciate. And that allows you to refine your hypothesis and your experiments further. And so, again, to be able to make those refinements early in the product process instead of waiting until you already have something in market that you're selling or believe you're going to be selling. So these combination of hypotheses, experiments, and insights enable you to reduce the uncertainty and the risk later on in the process when you're more invested, often have, developers and others going through as well. Sorry.
Okay, so I have a question. I was exactly today going through my progression system in Solvi, and we have a path that our AI helps the user to create the first MVP. And I think can be super helpful. But my assumption was today that maybe this is not something that every founder needs. What is your experience like? Do people who have already a product in mind need this path through hypothesis, experiments, and insights, or is your experience that most founders don't have this type of process before they come up with a business idea, and that every founder should go through this process?
I believe every founder should go through this process because our ideas aren't necessarily the same ones that everybody else has. And so to be able to identify what others want or could benefit from, or just to get a better sense of how people are doing what we think we can do better, you need to be able to talk to people. And so there'll be facets of your ideas that will resonate, but there'll be facets that don't. And you want to be able to learn about that as early as possible to be able to create more connection with your customers, but also to be able to focus on the areas that are of most value to them. What you're highlighting is, something that we can do now. The idea that we're exploring, the experiments we're running are deeper. They have more interactivity. They have more capabilities than what we used to do pre AI. And
Mhm.
you can use those to be able to test your hypothesis and run experiments, but there's still going to be refinements that you make based on the learnings from your early prospects or customers. So I still believe there's going to be refinements, even if you have something that's a product or more tangible early on.
Mhm.
The thing it's still the thing we're still finding with all of the AI and the vibe coding, et cetera, it gets to a certain point. And then when you need to scale or you need security or you need, other facets to be able to support multiple markets, you still need developers and you still
Mhm.
need, more, I'm going to say more resources behind it. And so if you go through the hypothesis, the experiments, the insights early on, you're not spending as much money later because you've sussed out some pieces that you may not need, but you've also made refinements to the ones that you do. And so when you scale your company or your dev resources, et cetera, you're scaling them in the right way.
Good. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. Awesome. So how do you do it? These are the steps that I would recommend going through. You got this idea. It could be, now, as Christoph said, it could be a product. You break it down. How are you going to identify those hypotheses that you think are or where you're going? So you take that original idea and you break it down into smaller pieces that you can test. You want it to be something that's focused, ideally one area that you want to test. And so that's why the quote across the bottom is key. You want to break that idea down into the smallest testable unit. Because if you're trying to test two things in one experiment, you don't really know what one is clouding the other because you're asking two questions instead of just one. And so that's why breaking that idea down into the smallest testable hypothesis is key. Then you want to test your hypothesis. You go out into the market, you run and talk to people. There's always the conversation of, folks going to, a coffee shop and just, asking people why they're in the queue. What do you think of X, Y, and Z? Those types of things. It's great to do it in the Gilder community. Just ask people for their feedback or their insight. And so you want to be able to assess these three areas. Is what you're asking them about or sharing with them desirable? Do they really want it? Is it something that they would stop spending their money somewhere else and put it towards you? Is it something that they would weave into their day? There, you want to see if it's feasible. They may give you other ideas. Can you do them? Can you incorporate them? Is it something that you have the skills to be able to do? And then you want to see the viability of the idea. Some people will say things that are just not possible today or kind of outlandish based on, where you're going. And that's still a data point. It may tell you that you need to refine your idea. But if it's something that's not viable right now or an area where you have the capabilities to do, you need to be able to look for a different audience or potentially refine your idea. From there, you run those experiments. You put things out into the market. You may do a landing page. You may vibe code an offering and test it. You may put something physical out and have people, work on a 3D printed prototype. You may invite people into, a room or two of your experimental escape room. So there's a lot of different ways to break anything down into a smaller experiment that you could run. And that you want to do before you get too committed to your original idea. And what I mean is a lot of founders go in with blinders. They believe my idea is perfect. These people just don't understand it. They just don't appreciate it. Well, guess what? You're selling to those people, or you're going to try to sell to those people. And if your idea doesn't resonate, then that may mean there are changes that you need to make, the wording, the offering, the product itself. And so you need to open up your eyes to be able to see what people are conveying to you. It might be in their mannerisms, it might be in their expressions, it might be just listening to their words. But most likely, there are going to be ways that they're going to help you make your idea better. That doesn't mean that you were wrong. It doesn't mean that, the people that you're talking to are wrong. It just means that there are other views beyond the founders. And that is something to think about, is that you're selling to people that aren't just you. And you need to be able to identify a way to introduce an offering that resonates with them. And again, that goes back to product discovery.
And so one of the questions, Diane, too, that I feel like struggle with sometimes, like I mentor for right, Techstars at Founder Institute, some other groups, and it's kind of that tough line of like, and again, what I went through with rolling with my first company is like exactly as you said, founders see a problem that they face, maybe coworkers or families or friends faced, but it's tough to kind of vet that against who's eventually going to use it, right? It's tough enough to get people to download a free app and free platform and obviously pay for it. And so maybe it's probably not necessarily in this deck, or is there like kind of a template or formula or almost like interview process? Because I talked to so many founders that make that mistake of kind of like, again, leading or like driving the product interview, to validate what they think. And I've been looking for like, just from what I do, right? Like I haven't formalized it, but like I'm looking for something that is shareable out of showing like this is kind of a best practice, or this is how you kind of structure those conversations at the coffee shop or over Zoom. Do you have any other recommended templates or things like that, or even just tips on how to guide that?
Yeah, I'll give some tips and then I'll recommend a site. So we tend to ask questions that are either yes or no. And that means we ask, why did you do something? Or have you done something? When you ask a question that's yes or no, you're cutting off a conversation. You're missing out on the opportunities to learn. So, best practices, ask open ended questions. Ask questions that begin with what or how. You're then having people give you more insight. In coaching, we have this phrase called drain the bucket. And it's the same thing that you want to do with product discovery. You want to have people tell me more. And so when someone asks, when someone answers a question for you, if you feel that there's more, or they're pausing, kind of looking at you for some type of recognition that they should keep on going, just say, tell me more, because you're going to gain a lot more insight than if you just shut down the conversation. And so when I do product discovery sessions, I will typically do them for 45 minutes. And what I will do is I will stop at 30 minutes, with my questions and just dive into, their experiences, ask more. So always set aside time for those open-ended opportunities for them to tell you more. And those 9 times out of 10 are where the nuggets come through, because, you got them thinking based on your questions. You're wanting to learn more based on their answers. So you want to have a little bit of wiggle room to be able to dive in more. But again, focus on those open-ended questions, typically how or what questions. That would be the best practice. The site that I recommend for templates and for guidance is Strategizer. They have really good templates about, all aspects of the product development process. Their book is really good, which is where, I've got some resources from. But they've got some great examples of just ways to run experiments. They're the ones who did, the business model canvas. So you've probably seen some of their assets before. You got it, Cody. It's a really, really good site just to be able to have templates that you can use across all aspects of the product development process.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Diana. And I think that's what I'm sure Tyga's going to reach out at some point too. We've been working on our product
Oh, cool.
development and course as well within Gilder. And so we kind of have some of our own templates and things that we've been
Perfect.
doing. So I'd love to, we'll chat to get your feedback and expertise kind of shedded on that as we share that out here later this next month in May.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, Strategizer's been around for a while. A lot of their templates tend to be sometimes they're perceived as being more applicable to bigger, more established companies. There are a couple of players that are doing like the business model canvas, for example, more on a lean approach that works, more closely with what startups are thinking. But, I'm one of those people, if you give me a template, then I'll probably morph it, like 14, 15 times. So from Strategizer, you can get a great starting point and then just morph it to fit with your stage of company or business. Cool. All right. So some discovery methods. And again, there are ways you can do these with AI now. There are a lot of really cool tools that you can use to be able to do them. But behind the scenes, the methods are still the same. They're just being, provided in a slightly different method. So data mining, you're going to get analytics from where people go into your site. If you have a landing page, you're going to be gathering insight. If you're doing an escape room, it may be how far do people get? It may be do they come back? And if so, how frequently? There's data everywhere. And so you want to start gathering data as soon as possible because then you can identify the signal through the noise. One of the things that data will also help you identify is when there's a theme. And when you do user research, you may think you've got to speak to a lot of people. Typically, between 5 and 7 people, you're going to get a good signal. And that again is through data. To be able to suss through the answers that people gave you to those open ended questions, you're going to get a theme pretty quickly. And that helps you to be able to determine, those squiggly lines. Where do you start to focus? Interviews and focus groups, again, my background, and I still believe there's value in speaking to humans. I will say though that I'm, very keen on synthetic users too. You can use the synthetic users to test out some of your questions. You can use synthetic users to explore some of some of the information that you may be putting into a one pager about your product. Synthetic users will give you some signal, but you still want to talk to those people to be able to really understand the resonance or not. I like doing interviews better than focus groups. In focus groups, it's hard because you tend to get a little bit of a group think. There tends to be, one person or two people that tend to dominate a focus group. Even if they're really well run, you've kind of got to veer towards the people who may be a little bit quieter to get them to speak up. But again, I love interviews just because then you have more opportunity to veer into an area that you didn't expect to come up, but is where that really valuable information is. Surveys and questionnaires, like Brian said, there's a lot of expertise to be able to do surveys and questionnaires. This is again where a great place where the synthetic users could come in. You could run a survey or a questionnaire with synthetic users, see if are the answers not at all related to the questions. Maybe your question didn't come across the way that you thought it did. And so it's a really good way to test things. So surveys, just, gathering feedback, questionnaires tend to go a bit deeper from there, but I still find them extremely valuable to be able to get insight. I'll give an example. I work on, this innovation assessment. We've got new capabilities that we're introducing. I had people walk through some scenarios and give me feedback in the survey. And that really helped me to be able to refine and identify common themes that then are where I'm going to focus on as I build out or refine features. Card sorting is really helpful when you have a product. It's going to be either a digital product or a physical product. And the card sorting identifies how people think. And what I mean is if you go through a website, there's typically navigation. I'm using Chrome right now. It goes across the top. It goes Chrome, File, Edit, View, History. In order to identify that information architecture, most likely someone did a card sorting exercise. They put down a whole bunch of cards with a whole bunch of words on them and asked people to sort them. And that indicates how your mind works, the mental models that we have, but may not even realize. And in order to allow people to do something, without a lot of friction, you want to try to replicate the mental model that people have. And so card sorting allows you to identify those themes, those groupings that seem natural to people, and then you can build that or incorporate that into your offering. Tree testing is taking that a step further. You want to be able to identify in a tree. So as you think about all the different branches that you navigate when you're in an application or when you're using, a car or anything like that, there's typically a starting point and then it branches off into different ways depending on the feature that you're using. And how those branches develop, that's where tree testing comes in to see if information's in the right place. I know we've all probably ordered food online at some point in time. I know occasionally there's frustrations because there's a certain type of food you want that isn't in the category that you thought it would be. That means that their tree testing may not have been ideal. So again, it helps people be able to just do something without a lot of friction. And when there's less friction, there's a higher likelihood that the individual is going to convert. And then in the back of the deck, I've got a lot of examples of all of these, so you can keep on going. Usability testing with any product, hardware, software, I would say even with a service, you want to know how people can navigate it. How easy is it for them to go through? And what I mean is that you want to be able to see if they can complete the desired task. If no one can, chances are there's something you need to refine. If, two people do and two people don't, you still, chances are, want to make refinements. You want people to be able to complete the task, to get to that aha moment, to be able to celebrate that they actually, got to where they wanted to go. There is a big debate in the usability world around friction. And what I mean is that sometimes a little bit of roughness is good because the person feels like they accomplished something. The example that I will give is IKEA. There's always those references to IKEA furniture and the fact that people keep IKEA furniture much longer than they ever expected. And typically that's because they built it themselves. They had those pieces and they put together the furniture themselves, took their own sweat, their own, due diligence to be able to create it. And so they feel this deeper connection to it. That's the same thing in software and hardware, et cetera. If there's a little bit of a learning curve, once people get past that learning curve, they feel more tied to that offering. I'm not saying to put in a lot of friction, just enough so that people feel like, hey, I achieved something. I did something. I can check a box. And that's usually a good celebration for people. So again, with user research, you can identify that point between too much friction and just enough to make people feel like, hey, I deserve this. I did a good job. Observation assessments is another way where you're spending time with the individual. And that's really important because even in usability testing or user research, people are trying to be nice. They're trying to answer the questions in a way that'll be helpful for you. But when you actually observe someone, you may find that there's things they left out of their conversation with you. They're things that they just do, and they're not even aware that they do it. And so if you can just observe a human in their natural environment, you're going to see points in their day that your product could make better that they didn't even think about because they just do it unconsciously. It's the same way they make their coffee every day. They don't even think about it anymore. But some of those friction points are areas where you could address, where your product could address. So the observations are really helpful to be able to suss out those things that we don't remember or we don't think are important. We just don't think are relevant. And so we don't share them. And then for those who are analytically minded, there's a lot of ways to take that information and score it, dive deeper into different models to be able to pull out those nuggets of gold. So all of those methods are there to be able to help you gather insight and value, to assess your usability, to help make better decisions, and to have introduced a product that's even better than what you originally thought of. And so you ask those questions, you go beyond the surface by, tell me more during the bucket. You embrace a data-driven approach, and everything is data. A conversation is data. The user experience walkthrough is data. A prototype is data. All of that data helps to inform what you keep, what you change, and what you leave. And then together, that creates a culture of research. And I think that culture is extremely important because you never stop learning. Even when your product's in the market, even when your product is extremely, winning in all these different spaces, you don't stop evolving. There's someone right at your heels, always. And so by building in a culture of research, you're always making your offering better and you're always staying aligned with the audience that you have and the individuals that you want to reach. Oh,
Yeah, sorry. I just had a quick question
thanks.
from the previous side on the data and analytics front.
Yeah.
'Cause, a lot of the stuff we've talked about is, getting in focus groups, getting in front, talking to people, which is super valuable. From a more automated analytical standpoint, do you have any tools or anything that you'd recommend, especially early stage for prototyping that would be good to layer in that can do some of that tracking and that user tracking for you? Because I think you're right, where they'll tell you one thing, but do something differently in the product, and that's
Yeah.
the valuable part, right? So, do you have any recommendations there that we could explore?
Yeah, and I'll have a couple in the slides as well. The ones that come up to mind just off the top of my head. There's one called Marvin, which is a usability product. And so you can use Marvin to be able to get to people. I used to live across the street from usertesting.com. And so they'll, basically identify individuals who are your target persona and then do the recruitment or the evaluation for you. So you could use usertesting.com. I also use for synthetic users something called Ask Rally. So you could either do, a usertesting.com with real people, you could use Ask Rally, that is more synthetic, or you could use some of the tools like Marvin and do it yourself. So it depends on how much access you have to customers or potential customers, the path that you want to choose.
And then for everyone here too, sorry, Cody. Yeah, for anyone here too, if you haven't had a chance to meet Brittany Canty yet, she's also a product leader here in Gilder. She's got a platform that's aggregated probably about 200 customer interviews so far across different things from services, products, what name it, what have you. So she has, I think, aggregated and already shared some of that out, but feel free to connect with her. We'll kind of be tapping into some of that information if you want already existing data sets, but kind of how she did that, or how to use it for newer data sets based on whatever your company or product is. So just putting that out there, and feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions also on that.
Awesome. And yeah, just a quick follow up. Anything around like automated like user tracking within a platform? So like
Huh.
they did this click action, they went here, then got here, got frustrated, clearly here. That kind of tooling.
Yeah, one to look at, it's heat maps is Microsoft Clarity. It's actually free. So, that means you are the data and you essentially are how they're building their business. But you'll get free insight into how people are navigating through your site just with Clarity.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. The other one that people have used is PostHog. PostHog, is more technical from that perspective. There are a lot of different pieces that you could bring together. Clarity, you drop in, a code and you're able to run it. PostHog, you've got similar capabilities. It just requires more development to be able to connect them all together.
No, perfect. Really helpful, really insightful. Thank you.
No problem. Data mining, as we're talking about, I'm gonna go through these a bit quickly because yeah, just data mining, extracting information. I'm going to say I love Anthropic. I'm definitely a Claude user. What's really cool with Claude Cowork is it has skills built in to help with some of the data mining, the data research. And so within Cowork, they have a whole set of tools that are specific for product people. I think it's called like a product management tool set. In there, there is a user research skill, and so it's really good at sussing through data from, an Excel spreadsheet or other type of format, and then creating a report of the findings. So I love using, anything by Anthropic, and I really do use their research skill quite a lot, and impressed by the way that it, susses out insight and then creates a report I can share with others. Interviews and focus groups, again, one-on-one conversations that just allow you to dive in. These, again, I still think are valuable. As the great questions you guys asked, there's other ways to get at users than just knowing them. And so, being able to talk to a human, you're going to get deeper insights than you would just by, talking to something synthetic or, just going off of gut instinct. Surveys and questionnaires, just diving in a bit more to them. I use Google Forms all the time. I think it's, really, really straightforward. Does 99% of what I want it to do. The other one you guys may have heard of is SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is really good, just an additional cost. If you've got the Google Suite, you've got surveys, and you can just run with it. So Google Forms, that's what I use. Works really, really well. Evaluation methods, usability testing, card sorting and tree sorting, just talking about ways that you'd want people to go through something. Usability testing is great when you have a prototype or something interactive that people can go through and you can observe where they get stuck. Maybe they go down a different path you didn't expect. When you're building out your product further or thinking about a new feature, card sorting, tree testing is really great just to understand the mental models that people have, where they would flow and how they would tend to, naturally gravitate towards information being combined together. And just some benefits beyond it, just from those pieces. Again, we think, we all, we're excited about something. We think everybody's going to be excited about it. And that's not always the case. And so you want to be able to understand more about how people naturally think, how they're just wired. And you can get to that, information from an organizational perspective through card sorting and tree testing. So I've done that a lot just when building out sites and products. Usability tests, again, you find that something's really intuitive to you because you've been spending, a lot of hours, a lot of time working with something, and then you put it in front of a person and they're like, I don't even know how to start. And so that's really, really helpful because we get so just kind of in this zone of where we think everything is intuitive because we do it, we love it, we believe in it. But when you put it in front of a potential customer, they're like, this doesn't make sense to me. That's the reality that you're trying to find because that identifies an area that you need to improve. And that ensures, again, that you're speaking the language of your customers in a way that they can follow and understand. And then some ways that you can do observational assessments if you're able to see humans in the wild. You just want to be able to, understand how they navigate through something. So based on Cody's question, that's a great one with Clarity or PostHog or other tools like that. You can see where people try to go to find information. That's really, really helpful. Pain points, you always want to ask people, who might be your target customer or might be someone that you're trying to convert to a customer. You want to understand what their pain points are. And that may be something that's top of mind for them. It may be something that requires a little bit of deeper insight. But chances are, if there's a pain point, that's an opportunity for you to be able to address it and win someone over to your product. Scoring methods, with questionnaires, you just want to have information behind the scenes about some of the answers, which ones are more valuable, which questions have more weight. It may be that they're all equal, and that's fine too. But oftentimes when you're doing a questionnaire, there's, a golden question that you want to ensure, you really get deep insight from. And so that may have more weight than other questions. These are some of the tools. Maze is a good one to use to be able to understand from a user research perspective. That is similar to SurveyMonkey and Google Forms. Use Maze in some companies that I've been at. It's got a lot more features and capabilities. Again, may not be, what you need, may have too much. SurveyMonkey, folks are familiar with. You probably get, a SurveyMonkey survey probably once a week or so. And then Google Forms. It's in your Google Suite. You got it. It works. I just use it. And then if you want some AI powered tools for discovery, like I said, Hey Marvin, I like them just because of the Marvin. They Said is another one that's been out there, Listen Labs. And I will say, these products do change quite frequently. So I'll share something and then find out a week later that they're no longer in business or they've pivoted to something else. So I apologize for that, but that's just kind of the market we're in today. But there are, these AI powered tools that help with discovery. So you can always, find some similar ones. And, why not use AI for all aspects of it? And you've heard some things from me throughout, but I still believe that, humans are unique. We have a lot of facets to us that we don't just put out on public display. And so a lot of what we, believe or say or do is complicated. It's complex. There's a lot of history, a lot of reasons behind what we do and why we do it. And to get to that, you really need to dig in. You need to create a connection with the person you're speaking to be able to ask some of those tough questions. And so I still believe that there's a lot of insight you're going to gain by actually speaking to a real human. Right. And then all of the slides in the back, again, you guys will get all the slides, just go into more detail around, all the pieces that I covered. So you'll have this primer to be able to share with your teams and just talk more about, all the different pieces, and just want you guys to have access to all the tools and, references and research that you may call upon when doing things. And again, the players may change, but the overarching characteristics are the same. So just use this information to help you do what you want to do, build what you want to build. A lot of important information in the back. Just clicking through so you guys can see what's there. And that's it.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Diana. Super exhaustive of all the different tools and everything in it. So I've got 8 minutes left here. Wanted to kind of open it just any immediate questions. I've got one question to pose to you, Diana, and then anyone else, if you feel free to ask after. But for anyone at this, I got kind of one, if there was one biggest piece of advice that you wanted to give to anyone that's in that stage, because again, you're going through like, even here at Gilder, right? Like our ICP has evolved greatly over the past, 3 years that we've been running. And so, it doesn't matter if you're at your first 100 customers, you're first 1,000, right? Or you're at 10 million plus an ARR. Obviously that ICP is always evolving as you have new products and features. So like, what's the one kind of overarching piece of advice you'd give through those stages as different founders evolve and as their businesses grow?
Don't skip discovery. I still believe you're going to learn things by doing experiments, by talking to people, by putting your early stage product in front of people. You're going to learn things. There's so many founders, clients that I've spoken to who are like, it's not good enough. If you think it's not good enough, you've held it close for too long. Put it out there, get feedback. And that will allow you to identify things that you need to do differently, different ways you may need to position your product, and to be blunt, something else that you may need to build. The longer you put that off, the closer you keep something to yourself without sharing it, the higher likelihood is it's not going to be relevant by the time you put it out there, or it's just going to feel so, I'm going to put perfect in quotes, that people don't give you the feedback they need that you need because they feel like they're crushing your dream.
Well said. Appreciate that. All right. Any open questions, anything like that? Final thoughts, notes for Diana or what she shared here earlier today?
Hey Diana, how does this pivot to services?
Yeah, with services, so I'll give an example. I work at an innovation consultancy. And so we do discovery to identify the phrasing, the terminology, the positioning that we're going to use with our offering. People have mental models, and so they will always try to equate the service, the offering, to something they're familiar with. And so you want to be able to understand what that is. You want to understand where and how they're categorizing your offering, because that can help inform your positioning. And so, in a sense, a service is a product, it's an offering that you're hoping individuals will purchase. You still want to be able to understand how they're going to try to classify it based on their existing knowledge and how they're going to interpret what you're offering to them. And that's what discovery can help you with.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Any other final questions, thoughts? And then Diana, if there's also a way for people to get a hold of you, do you prefer then email, circle? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is good. On LinkedIn, you can actually, if you just click on my about, you'll get my email address too. So let me just drop that in.
And then we'll filter again if you have questions throughout about between sessions, product in general. You can use Diana's kind of chat in the circle or in our main Gilder hub, and then Diana, I'll reach out to you if there's things that filled up, since I know you're managing a ton of different groups as well. So I'll filter it through there. But yeah, any other questions? you can go through there or reach Diana directly. And excited for session 2 coming up.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, you guys. And yeah, I'll share the slides in the circle. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. I know in circle, if you write my name, then I'll get the notification. And so yeah, just tag me and I'll follow up.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you. I'm always learning, and it's just so deep in so many areas that I never even thought about. And glad to have you have done this. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you guys. Wonderful meeting you all.
Thank you,
So have a
Diana.
wonderful
Excellent
day.
stuff.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Good one, everyone. Cheers. Stop the recording here.